Iri-of-Six-Voices had never in 3 years shown Hari a number that was wrong. The number on the counter between them was wrong by exactly 1, and it was going to get one of them killed. The slow Suul way, the kind of dying that does not need a body. It was past 3rd shift. Iri kept odd hours at the least counter in the handoff wing. Hari had learned to read the dim stalls and the closed shutters as the broker's natural habitat, the place where a senior Suul did the work that did not photograph well. The strip lights up here were the same 3 colors as everywhere else on Reach Orbital 16. Pale white where the strips were right, wrong blue where the cheap replacements had gone in, dark where nobody had bothered. Hari had stood under worse light to hear worse news. He had flown home from Tarek Hold a month back with an empty cradle and a kin mark in his hand and a name on a second alien side. The vial was gone, received, lawful, no longer his to carry. The cold lockup in his quarters ran empty now, and he had not stopped noticing the absence. He had thought stupidly that delivering the continuance ended something.
You will recall, Iri said, that I once removed a unit from a bonded lot. No sale, no transfer, no record. I told you at the time that what is not a transaction is not remembered.
I recall you did me a favor and told me the asking came later. The later.
The later does not ask, Mr. Rao. The later arrives at 1st shift on a house cutter, carrying a seal token and account.
Hari looked at the number on the slate. 3, the contract said. 2, the lot said. The unit Iri had unwritten, the stasis-class cold box that had kept a dying Hold's whole tomorrow alive in Hari's quarters for 2 years, had come out of a 3-unit bonded lot owed to a buyer 2 sectors away. For 2 years, the discrepancy had sat in the dark where dormant things sit because nobody had reconciled the lot. Now the buyer's house had sent a factor to take delivery, and the factor would count, and the count would read 2.
So put the unit back. You've got 100 cold boxes. Move through here. A season.
And the moment one enters this lot, it is a transaction. And a transaction is remembered. A unit that appears with no provenance, late, in a lot that was sealed 2 years gone. That is not a repair, Mr. Rao. That is a flag. A careful factor follows a flag, and a flag in a lot. I held leads to one question only. Where did the original unit go? There is no honest answer to that question that I survive.
The room had gone cool. The way Iri's register cooled when a contract was in question. Hari had heard it once or twice. He had never heard it pointed inward before.
Survive. You keep using big words for paperwork.
It is not paperwork. A Suul, who is found to have unwritten a ledger line, has cut a piece out of the clade memory and hidden the wound. When the clade memory learns of the wound, and it learns everything, eventually, that is the entire point of us. That broker is closed out of it. Not punished, closed out. For a people whose record is their afterlife, Mr. Rao, that is the death that does not need a body. I did it for you with my hand open and my eyes also. I am telling you the price now, because the bill has docked.
The factor's name came through on the docking manifest an hour later, and Hari laughed out loud in the empty lounge when he read it, because the galaxy had a sense of humor, and it was a mean one. Pell of 2 voices, factoring, the manifest said, for House Oradell. Hari knew Pell. Everybody who had been on the wrong end of a Suul lien knew the type, but Hari knew this one in particular, the precise junior who had come for the drive core in Dako's skiff, who had watched Hari deep seat a fortune into scrap rather than let it be lawfully seized, who had stood in the venting cold and named, in his careful contract voice, that the maneuver would be one of the things his two voices held, House Oradell. So that was the house Pell had factored for all along, the same house that was owed 3 coal boxes and was about to be handed 2. He went back to Iri and laid it out, because the thing about Iri was that you could lay it out.
Your factors, Pell of Two Voices. We've met. He factors for Oradell, which I'm guessing you knew and didn't say.
He knew. I did not say, because the knowing changes nothing I can do, and may change something you can. The lot is bonded by count. Mr. Rao, 3 units of a recognized stasis-class category delivered. The bond does not warrant their function. It warrants that there be 3.
So, it doesn't have to work. It just has to be there.
A thing I cannot make be there, because anything I place is remembered as placed. But you are not in the clade memory. You never were. Whatever you do is not to us a transaction. It is whether.
And there it was, the asking, the way a Suul asks, which is to set the whole shape of the problem on the counter and then go very still and let the human decide they thought of it themselves. A lot bonded by count needed 3 units. It had 2. Hari needed to make it 3, and he needed the third one to be a thing that, when a careful Suul found it, did not start a single question. He could not buy one. He could not transfer one. He could not do anything that smelled like a broker repairing a hole. He could, however, ruin one. He was, after all, famous for it.
Pell carries the maneuver, the deep seat. He watched me do it. It's in his 2 voices.
He named it so. It is by now in more voices than his. The clade memory holds the shape of a human who destroys an inheritance component's value on purpose to defeat a collection. It is one of the very few things we hold about your kind that we did not have to be told twice.
Hari nodded slowly. That was the door. The thing about clade memory, the thing Iri had spent 3 years teaching him without meaning to, it was vast and it was patient, and it could only ever recognize what it already held. A Suul met an anomaly and reached instantly for the nearest pattern in the memory. An unwriting had no pattern. By design, Iri had cut the wound and hidden it precisely so that nothing in the memory would ever point at it. There was no column for it. There was no shape for it. A factor finding a short lot would never, ever guess unwriting, because the memory had nothing to guess with. But a human ruined a unit on purpose? That had a column. That had Hari's name carved into it in Pell's own 2 voices. He just had to give the memory something it could recognize, so it would never go looking for the thing it couldn't. He went to find a corpse. A stasis-class unit, intact, was worth a contractor's quarter year. A stasis-class unit, cracked, was worth the freight to haul it to the recyclers and not much over. The salvage racks on the contractor spur were full of them. Units that had taken a knock, lost their seal, equalized to ambient and never come back. Dead cold boxes. The trade had no use for a thing that could not hold the cold. So the trade threw them on a rack and forgot them, which meant Hari could put his hands on one without a single line of provenance touching a Suul ledger. He picked one that was the right category and the right age and was very thoroughly dead. He paid the spur foreman in a bottle and a favor and signed nothing. The foreman did not ask what he wanted it for. On the contractor spur, you learned early that the questions you did not ask were the ones that kept you bondable, and a dead coal box was the least interesting thing on the rack by a long way. Then he did the part that mattered, which was to make it lie correctly. A unit that had simply died was a unit that had died, and a careful factor might wonder idly how a dead unit got into a sealed lot. But a unit that had been killed by hand in the specific way a salvage chief kills value when he wants a thing worthless and lawful at once, that was not a mystery. That was a signature. That was the Rao maneuver, scaled down from a drive core to a cold box. the handling, forbidden seam driven exactly the way Pell had watched him drive one before. He worked Corv into the seating collar and cracked the cold-keeping core past the line its makers had drawn. The same line, the same way, so that anyone who knew the pattern would read it in a heartbeat. A human got his hands on this and spoiled it on purpose. Hari had spent 4 years being quietly furious that the Suul told that story about him. Tonight he needed them to. He carried the dead box to Iri's counter in the last hour before first shift and set it down with the 2 live ones.
You understand that if he reads it as anything other than what you intend, the question opens, and the question does not close again.
He won't read it as anything else. It's the only thing he's got a shelf for. You taught me that.
I taught you that the memory holds what it can recognize. I did not teach you to hand it a thing built precisely to be recognized. That is a finer cruelty than I would have credited a human with. My 6th voice is going to be insufferable about this.
Why'd the 6th do it? Unwrite the unit. For me. Asking nothing. You never actually said.
Iri was quiet a moment, the warm register cooling, and then oddly warming again, the way it did when a deal went well.
Because the 6th voice spent a career on human accounts and arrived at one conclusion. The rest of me resists that you can do a thing no Suul can do. We cannot make a thing unhappen. Everything we touch is remembered. That is our strength, and it is the wall we live behind. You unmake. You walk into a sealed history, and you take a piece out, and the universe does not notice because you were never in the record to begin with. The 6th wanted to see what a creature like that does when it owes a debt it cannot pay. In any currency the clade memory holds. So it spent a piece of me to find out. Tonight, apparently, it finds out.
The bay went quiet around the size of that. Hari did not have anything dry for it. Some things you just let sit.
And the debt I already owe you. The contract. The one with a number.
Sits exactly where it's at. The number is the number. This. A manipulator arm moved over the 3 boxes. This is not on it, because this cannot go on it. You are about to do me a kindness that my own afterlife has no way to record. I will know. The memory will not. Welcome, Mr. Rao, to the strangest debt either of us will ever carry. One neither of us can ever pay down, because it was never written.
First shift came up in the strip lights, pale white flickering to life over the wrong blue. Pell of 2 voices arrived at the handoff bay at the head of it, precise to the minute, the seal token bright on his sparse harness, the 2 beads at his throat, very few against the 6 on the broker who waited to hand him the lot. Pell recognized Hari. Of course he did. The visual band tracked across him with the faint hitch of a memory consulted, and his contract voice came out a half register higher and a beat faster than a senior's. Junior still, after everything.
Mr. Rao, the clade memory did not expect you at an orbital reconciliation. It has, I will say, a great deal to say about you. None of it dull.
I get that a lot. I'm just bay crew today. Irie's handing off. I hauled.
Then I will count what you hauled.
He counted. This was the part Hari could not control. The part he had billed and then handed to a creature whose whole biology was an objection to being lied to. Pell went down the lot 1 unit at a time, a manipulator arm laid to each in turn, the seal token reading the category, the count climbing, 1, 2, 3. Pell stopped at the 3rd unit. The arm rested on it longer than it had rested on the others. The visual band tilted, reading the seam, and Hari watched a junior Suul's whole patient memory turn over once, looking for the shape of what it was seeing, and find one. Find the one Hari had handed it.
This unit is dead.
Yeah.
It did not die. The seating collar is driven past the handling line by hand recently.
You'd know the look of that better than most.
The bay was very quiet. Iri had gone the particular still that Hari now understood was a Suul holding its afterlife in both manipulator arms and waiting to see if it got to keep it. The count was the longest thing Hari had ever stood through, and he had once spent 9 days in a dead wreck waiting on a tow that came late. Pell straightened. When he spoke, the half-register of junior pride was gone, replaced by something flatter and, Hari thought, almost respectful.
The Rao maneuver. The 2 voices hold it, now 3 voices and a house hold it. You have done to a stasis-class unit what you did to a drive core, made a lawful thing worthless on purpose so that no one can profit by it and no one can be made whole. The visual ban came up to Hari. Why would you spoil a unit in a lot you were merely hauling, Mr. Rao?
And that was the only sentence in the whole night that could still go wrong. Hari kept his face dry and his answer short, because a long answer is a thing a careful Suul takes apart.
Salvage dispute. Not your houses. The unit was contested. I was paid to make sure nobody won it. You know how I work. It ended up in the lot because the bay's a mess, and the cradles get crossed. That's the orbital. Counts 3. The dead one's mine to answer for, not Oridel's.
It held because it had a shelf to sit on. Every word of it fit a thing the clade memory already believed. Rao destroys value. The orbital is a mess. A human takes ugly jobs. None of it pointed to anywhere the memory could not already go. Pell turned the explanation over, found it consistent with everything his 2 voices held about the human standing in front of him, and did the thing a rational Suul does with a worthless unit in a count-complete lot. He released it.
The lot is delivered. Count 3 of recognized category per the bond. The 3rd unit is assessed valueless and released to your account, Mr. Rao. House Oradel does not haul scrap 2 sectors to spite a contractor. 2 sound units satisfy the house's use. The matter closes.
He keyed the discharge into the seal token. On a registry 2 sectors away, a bonded lot that had read short for 2 years, quietly read settled. And the question of where its 3rd unit had gone was never asked, because by the registry's count, it had never gone anywhere. It was right there, dead with a human's name on the ruin of it. Pell crated the 2 sound units. At the bay door he paused, the visual ban coming back around to Hari one last time. And there was a thing in the flat contract voice that had not been there for the count.
A small observation, offered without charge. The maneuver used to mean a human who breaks value to defeat a collection. After today, the voices will hold a second meaning beside the first. A human who breaks value to hide something. I do not know what you hid, Mr. Rao. I know only that the shape now has a hollow in it where a thing used to be. The clade memory will carry the hollow without knowing what filled it. The flourish when it came was small and almost kind. You are becoming difficult to count. Houses will find that interesting.
Then he was gone, the sealed token's discharge mark already crawling toward a registry 2 sectors away, carrying a settled lot and a small new hollow in the shape of Hari's name. Hari let out the breath he had been holding since the count reached 3. Iri came out of the stillness slowly, the way a thing comes back to itself when it has decided it gets to keep living. The warm register returned. Not relief, exactly. Suul did not do relief. Something drier and older than that.
He is right, of course. He usually is. It is his worst quality. You spent the one thing your reputation was good for, and you spent it on me. And now the houses will hold a human who hides things inside the shape of a human who destroys them. That is not a smaller target. Mr. Rao, it is A stranger won.
Yeah. Well, you unwrote a piece of your own afterlife. So a vast kid I'll never meet could maybe exist someday. We're both bad at the math.
The dead box sat on the side bench, released to Hari's account, worth the freight to the recyclers and not much over. He would haul it down himself. It had done more work tonight than any intact unit on the orbital. There was the cost, and Hari was honest enough to name it to himself, even if nobody held it on a ledger. He had handed the Suul a deeper, blacker version of the worst story they told about him, and they would carry it now, sharpened into more houses than one. Somewhere on Reach Orbital 16, an auditor named Imari kept a forecast on the record about the day the thing under his threshold became a thing she had to count, and tonight he had moved an off-books component through a handoff bay and ruined it on purpose in his own quarters, and that day had not gotten further away. He had spent something real. He always did. The thesis of his whole life was that you win by spending the thing nobody else would think to spend.
Tell your sixth voice. It got its answer. What does a creature like me do? When it owes a debt, it can't pay.
It pays it in a currency the ledger cannot hold and asks the broker to keep the account open because there is no other place left to keep it. The faceted band held him, and the dry warmth in the broker's voice was, for once, not protocol. The sixth voice is satisfied, Mr. Rao. The account stays open. To see what you do next. It was always only ever going to stay open for that.
Hari took the long route back to his quarters, through the service mast, the dead box under his arm. The strip lights flickered him along, pale white, wrong blue, dark, pale white. He thought about the hollow Pell had named, the shape of a man who breaks things to hide things, carried now in the patient memory of a people who never forget, with a gap in the middle of it where the truth used to be. He had spent 2 years carrying a thing he could not report, return, or read. Now he had spent his own bad name to bury the fact that he'd done it. Iri was right. It was not a smaller life. He set the dead box down by his bunk, beside the empty cold lockup, and looked at the two of them, the absence and the corpse, and found he was not sorry about either. The account stayed open, to see what he did next. He turned off the bench lamp. Out past the viewport the orbital turned, and somewhere 2 sectors away a registry held a settled lot and a hollow it could not name, and a Suul went on being alive who otherwise would not have, and none of it was written down anywhere a Clade could find. He found that he could live with being the kind of weather a careful people learns to watch.